Okay, this is a very, very exciting time to be keeping track of Bitcoin because the FOMC meeting is coming up. And what I want to do is that I want to talk about potential trade setups that we can look for and narrow them down as we get closer to the FOMC date, right? So that's going to be over here, not next week, the one after Tuesday. That's the day. And there's a few interesting articles as well. I want to just they don't mean too much when it comes to Bitcoin in the short term, but it's super exciting. For example, before we jump into the charts, Schwab is trying to take clients from Coinbase. They're getting more serious about being able to trade Bitcoin directly on their own exchange. That's super cool. And then again, mostly a hype article, but Bitcoin becomes fifth global asset ahead of Crypto Week. I'm not too crazy about Crypto Week. There's been a lot of crypto White House stuff related, and it wasn't really too much of a catalyst in any way. But it's cool to still see what they're planning to do. But I'm gonna go over Bitcoin. I'm gonna go over Mara after, so we can get a better understanding of what's going on with Mara by understanding Bitcoin and what these trade setups look like. And again, besides all of this just being my own opinion, I'm just sharing with you guys how I'm viewing these charts. Personally, I'm not telling anyone to copy. I'm not telling anyone to do exactly what I'm saying, but I am hopefully influencing a lot of you guys to do your own due diligence. But what I'm trying to say is that these multiple setups, a lot of these different ways that can unfold, um, it's going to be very overwhelming just because we're still over a week before the FOMC, basically, and as we get closer, we can start narrowing down these setups because we will see how the price unfolds prior to the FOMC, and then it'll give us a better idea of at least how I want to position myself, um, either just before or just after the FOMC, depending what the trades setup look like. But to get a good understanding is that overall, my primary view did not change for Bitcoin. Unfortunately, it is the weekend, so the stock market is not open. I cannot buy BitU. I told you guys that I want to accumulate early because my primary view is Bitcoin will come down and try to find support around 110K. This will be a very nice overall retracement from this move up because, the prior move where it went from like deep value all the way up, eventually this dip right here did break into the purple, which was a bit more aggressive at the time, but it finally filled this area. So now I'm looking for a proper retracement within the next one, and it kind of falls in line with expectations of CPI wasn't great. It could have been worse, but it wasn't you know great. It was well above expectations, which isn't really good when it comes to the likelihood of the Fed cutting rates earlier than expected. I now believe that, you know, again, fall time will be most realistic when it comes to that first rate cut um, coming up next. So I believe rates will stay the same this next FOMC meeting, but it can still provide a really good setup. So as of right now, I'm looking for lower prices to come down within this red, which I gave you guys this bearish, short-term bearish fib extension area with this move right here that gave us this, and it just strengthens the possibility of Bitcoin going, and potentially dipping into 110K briefly as a potential, last opportunity to buy before it goes up higher, or at least to accumulate. But unfortunately, I want to accumulate now because we're within this first, more mild, but it's still a very important fib extent, or not. It's a retracement because we came into it. We found support above the point 0.5 retracement at 115,300. And if you guys know, if you've been watching for a while, I usually like to see if that happens. I like to usually see a retest that actually breaks a point 0.5 retracement, whatever price it's going to be. This obviously in this case it's 115,367, and that's what I'm keeping an eye on. So I do believe that we have momentum to come down lower. We came down, made a lower low within the smaller picture. We're still holding a higher low within the bigger picture, but this recovery was very, very weak. And if you guys just keep track of it with a simple retracement, we see that it did go into resistance and then it started weakening. On top of that, we also have the 120 moving average. It's a little hard to see right now because it's blue and it's overlapping with this, but we're still holding below it. We used it as a resistance right here. So, we still have that bearish momentum to potentially, keep an eye on. And the RSI hasn't really exhausted itself to the downside yet. So we can still see a retest of that retracement. We can still see it maybe go up into it a little bit more. But regardless, it's not something I'm really paying too much attention to unless we have bullish confirmation, which is breaking above the resistance, holding a higher low within the smaller picture. So it will look something like this, where we go up into that retracement that I had a moment ago, hold a higher low, and then go up higher, breaking this swing high, and then a little bit more of a bigger picture retracement to confirm a potential uptrend. That's just what I'm looking for, is a very simple alternative scenario that we're not going to go into this area any longer, and instead I should be looking at accumulating uh, as we go up higher before we reach this next area, because I do believe soon Bitcoin will be at 128,000. Usually these fib extensions hold up pretty well, at least from my own experience. It doesn't have to, but that's an alternative scenario as of right now, because we still have that bearish momentum forming. We're holding below the 120 moving average. The setup I'm looking for is, as we get closer to the FOMC, we can see continued weakness due to expectations sort of being lowered, that the Fed will want to cut rates earlier than expected. A lot of that hype is starting to die out, and that could potentially cause a very slow decline in Bitcoin until the event happens. And then of course, maybe it's not super hawkish and there's some promising words said, or at least positive things that causes the price to go up. So it could be an opportunity for the price to come down into a very nice support, and then start its uptrend back up to make a new all-time high. So that's the first potential setup. Now, an alternative, right? The second potential setup would be the price. Actually, there's three, but the price holds sideways until the FOMC happens for the most part. Because as of right now, I mean, a breakout will happen soon. Because if you guys like triangle patterns during times like this, where we're getting into a very important news press conference event, we can potentially see the price continue to consolidate, sharpen, lowering its volume before a breakout happens. Now, if this does happen, I don't like to get ahead of myself too much, but I do believe the breakout can happen to the downside. It would just allow the overall retracement to happen, and it will prove short-term, not very confident when it comes to the FOMC and what's going to be said. But that would just be a really, really good opportunity for at least me to buy while other people are selling, when to me the chart is telling me that it's a pretty good buying opportunity, especially since eventually rate cuts will happen this year. Regardless of what happens after next week, I still believe Bitcoin will be working its way higher. It will eventually get a rate cut, and then we'll start getting a lot of money flowing into these risk-on assets, basically. But as of right now, regardless of that, both pathways lead to lower prices. Now, the third way would be, we hold the bigger picture ascending support. We hold above the swing low. We push higher, and then we're starting to look for potential, smaller picture confirmations of a continuation of a rally that can break past the previous swing high, which is all-time high. And then at that point, it's, at least to me, it will be very likely that we will see a short-term sell the news event to cause it will just cause some fear, but it will be a quick recovery after, and then it'll go up higher. So both the first and second scenario are coming down around 110K is at least what I'm looking for. And then the third one will be looking for signs of continuation in this uptrend, because regardless of what's going on, of course, tariffs, we're still waiting to see what's going to happen, negotiations by the August deadline. And then, of course, rather or not, tariffs will be hit, something will happen prior to stop it, or of course, the deadlines get pushed even further back, because as well, I believe this is a large, not just negotiation tactic for overseas trade, but I do believe it's a way he's putting pressure on Jerome Powell. Regardless, at the end of the day, I don't really care, because I'm focusing on these value structures. So that's basically what I want to say about Bitcoin. Again, primary view at the moment is just lower prices. I want to accumulate now. I can't. I have to wait till Monday market open, but hopefully the price is still holding below um 118K and potentially continue its way down. But we can see a little bit of a short-term pump. The big coincidence in this actually is that this breakdown right here, which is still holding a overall little swing high, but this breakdown, if it comes up into the within the next few hours or even sometime by the end of Monday, we're also looking for futures market to open tomorrow, see how that's going to influence Bitcoin. But we can easily see a bit more of a test of this resistance. Obviously, we can go up and break 119K briefly, but we have that descending resistance line to keep an eye on as well. So those are a few ways it can unfold. Two of them being lower prices with a buy the news, basically, and even if we're down and after the we've seen this happen before where there's like a super short term intraday sell off and then a quick recovery and then things just keep rocketing. So we'll see how that unfolds. But again, before I jump into Mara, as we get closer to the FOMC, I'll be able to narrow these down and I'll be able to provide a lot more detail with what I'm looking for. There's just a lot of time. There's over a week. There's over a week left basically for this to happen. So, I want to say all this, let the price set it up, and then narrow it down and provide more detail on top of that, right? So that's what I'm looking for primarily, but let's see how it unfolds. Again, I'll keep you guys updated when it comes to Mara. It's a very similar setup. Basically these three pathways are the same, although, and I said this in a previous video, Mara is not a direct it's not a good way to directly invest in Bitcoin. It is leverage. I mean, if Bitcoin skyrockets like crazy, it will influence Mara, and it will influence in a leveraged way, basically. But there's a reason, and if you guys zoom out, like on the weekly, even month, or even yearly candles, you'll see that the overall trend for bull market cycle tops is still moving down. And that's because, again, this is a company that has, a lot of, money flow when it comes to, investing in more equipment. There's a growth expense and there's a sustainability expense. Because, again, every 4 years, if you guys don't know, of course, Bitcoin becomes increasingly, extremely more difficult to mine. So they need to pump a lot of money into growing their structure when it comes to more mining equipment, improved cooling as they increase their footprint when it comes to the Bitcoin mining field, and then on top of that, it's they're not focused on the shareholder; they're focused more on being the top player and maintaining to be like the top player. So, if Bitcoin starts to slowly trend higher, like we've seen this happen many times before, where Bitcoin goes up, Mara comes down, Bitcoin goes up. It's super. It's not consistent. So I want to stress that even though these setups are very similar for both of them, the reason I am focusing on these three setups for Mara is because the macro influence, the FOMO, the hype when it comes to what the Fed says will, affect the majority of like publicly traded assets in a very similar way. But when it comes to the rest of the aftermath and how the setups continue, or after the setups happen, and then the announcement happens, and then of course we can see them trade differently. So I'm focused on primarily value when it comes to Mara as well. So previously, I've called out these buy zones very well, with imbalance being a good sell area and then extensions being another good sell area. So I'm just going to provide my opinion again, and that's we're in this uptrend, right? Like if you guys like super simple channels, for the most part, trend lines don't have to be perfect, but it gives you an idea of what we're looking for. So like even if we do that, we came below it and then we had an aggressive push higher, so we can come below it once again into this accumulation area. This will be the overall retracement which will allow Mara to come into a short-term deep value buying zone, in my opinion, before it pumps up higher into the next sell zone, which could be, ideally looking at 2250, but it can even stretch a little bit higher than that. But the moment it stretches higher than 2250, the amount of risk when it comes to how quickly it can dip down is incredible. Like right here, we broke past the median value area for this extension. It didn't last very long. It lasted like 2 hours basically before the price quickly dipped back down. So it's just, there's no reason to be greedy, but there's nothing wrong with participating and getting out when there's a good time to get out, because it's as simple as that. But basically, we can come below the support line into the buy zone. We can be in here for a little bit or quickly recover. But again, if we don't break below the 0.5, which I really like to see, it's possible we can have a second test. Like here, we came down into a pretty good median area for an extension. For when it comes to retracements, as you can see, they don't always have to come down to the 0.5. But that's why I like to accumulate early. So if we don't and it starts to pump up like crazy, at least you have some exposure, and that's how I like to approach it. But then a lot of the time when we don't reach the 0.5, we end up retesting it later on. We have a bullish fake out, a lower low, retest, or actually testing the 0.5 before it goes up higher. This happens a lot in Bitcoin. This happens a lot in Mara. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with accumulating early. That's why in Bitcoin, I want to start accumulating early within the orange before it goes into the red, where I'll continue accumulating and then just let the price do its thing. I'm not trying to call a bottom, but I am trying to prepare a little bit ahead of time before the actual deep value happens. Because the moment, and I say this a lot too, the moment these assets, especially this year, trade within deep value, they can recover out of it super, super quickly. So there's no reason to try to time it, but there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, to accumulate with position sizing in mind and the time duration of your trades. But yeah, basically with Mara, we can see something similar where it can go up, hold prices higher, and it can be a potential sudden news event. But I'll be looking at signs of rather not holding prices higher will be healthy or not, and then what the risk is involved with that as well. But when it comes to waiting for this FOMC to happen as well, we can easily see like a little bit of weakness. Even a little bit of weakness in Bitcoin can influence a lot of fear in Mara, and we can see it come down. In this case, we have an early accumulation area before we go into deep value, but this will allow, again, if you focus on position sizing, it won't hurt you much. But then, if we come down into this red overall, which is my primary view, we can go up higher after the FOMC potentially, right? Because at the end of the day, these deep value areas within a bullish year tend to, not last very long before we go up higher. But, we can see some fluctuations within this as well. Like if Bitcoin opens up decent this next trading week, when the stock market opens, we can see, Bitcoin have like smaller bullish fake outs, and it will just be simple. It will be like, keeping an eye on retracement. So if you draw a retracement right here, it can come up to here. It can make a lower low. So then it will be like, keeping an eye on extensions as well. And it's constantly a cycle. It's constantly a cycle. Let's just say it tops out right here. It can come all the way down to here. If it comes down to here, cool, we're within this early area. But then what it'll look like is, again, you'll use another extension or retracement from the move down. Let's say the price comes all the way down to 1770, and then it'll go up into another retracement before. It's just constantly a cycle of drawing retracements and extensions, because once you get, at least the way I see it is that once I get very used to these, which I am, they give me a really good indication on whether or not a trend is healthy enough to continue, and it can give me, and it always does, early signs of an alternative scenario happening. The alternative scenario will be like, finding support a little earlier than into here, and then we start seeing signs with retracements being broken, and retracements, when it comes to bearish retracements, they start acting as support after breaking into it. And then there's plenty of ways to capture early signs that maybe the primary move won't happen, and it's all about just keeping keeping a real close eye on these charts, constantly updating the fibs, and then using them as an opportunity to get in or out, or accumulate more aggressively earlier than expected, or to keep it chill and accumulate slowly for a better buying opportunity to lower that average before the overall trend continues, right? So yeah, that's basically what I'm looking for. Similar thing with Bitcoin. I'm looking for lower prices. This isn't bearish because it just provides a overall support area to be filled, and it'll create a much healthier setup for the bulls to reset and then focus on the next push higher. Um, but I don't think there's a lot of bearishness. The bull market isn't done yet. We have rate cuts happening eventually. It's gonna put money into it, and then if we were done with the bull cycle, we won't be seeing such strong consolidation here, where the price doesn't want to dip down fast. It wants to hold itself well. And if it was the end of the bull market, we will see sell-offs happen, not holding as well as that, and then we'll see Mara fall 10. But yeah, no matter how much optimism there is in the market, we tend to see retracements eventually get filled. There's no reason to be overhyped, FOMO'd into a trade. It's better to be patient. Look for early signs of alternative moves, but until then, focus on what makes the most sense, which right now, a nice retracement, um, like briefly below $17 will be a really nice accumulation area, as long as my expectations. And again, what I'm saying now, it's the same views I've had back here and back here and here, and all of these held very well. It doesn't have to happen, but just because the macro environment, all the characteristics we're seeing, it can't even talk, are very similar to the previous setups too. So the psychology in the market isn't very different right now, in my opinion. But yeah, and then if you look at the overall, support with the swing low right here, it shows that we can potentially work our way down and find support within the red, and then push up higher. And again, no reason to get ahead of ourselves. Let's wait for good setups, and then on top of that, I'll be able to narrow down what I'm looking at as most probable realistically, as we get closer to the FOMC. And then once we do, I'll have a better idea of exactly how I want to approach these trades. So yeah, I'll keep making videos on this. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.